Today Show co-host Savannah Guthrie, and is its fourth day. Authorities are looking into whether a ransom note sent to a local TV station is real. Police believe 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie was abducted from her home.
This video is based on publicly available reports, verified news sources, and named on-record sources. All statements reflect what has been reported, not confirmed conclusions. No individual is accused of any crime. The Guthrie family, including all siblings and spouses, has been officially cleared as possible suspects by the Pima County Sheriff's Department. That clearance stands and no agency has walked it back. The official search did not find it. Not the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Not the FBI. Not the Joint Task Force with its forensic equipment and its federal resources and its 84 days of active investigation. A man with a camera and a grid system found it. His name is Jim. He is an independent content creator who goes by Exploring with Jim. He has no law enforcement authority, no institutional backing, no badge, no budget, no forensic team. What he brought to this investigation was something the official search operation failed to apply with any consistency: a systematic, repeatable method and the discipline to execute it. Grid searching. You divide the terrain into defined sections. You walk every section. You document everything exactly as you find it. Then you go back. Because here is what most people do not understand about physical evidence in outdoor desert environments. The first pass is never complete. Wind repositions items. Rain redistributes surface material. Desert vegetation cycles through exposure and concealment with every weather system that moves through. What was buried under silt in February can be sitting in plain view by the end of March. Jim knew that. He planned for it. He built his search strategy around it. And what the terrain gave up when someone finally walked it properly, twice, is the reason this investigation now has a word attached to it that the Pima County Sheriff's Department had not used in 84 days. Breakthrough. The question this video is going to answer is not just what was found. It is what the finding means, why that specific location matters, why the official search missed it, and why two separate finds in the same drainage channel behind the same property are not a coincidence the evidence can accommodate. Before getting into what Jim found, you have to understand where he found it. The wash behind Annie Guthrie's home is not incidental to this investigation. It is the geography this investigation has been circling for months without naming directly. A wash is a natural drainage channel carved by decades of desert storm runoff. In Tucson, these channels do not just cut through wilderness. They cut through neighborhoods. They run behind homes, under road bridges, alongside fence lines, connecting properties across distances that roads never touch. They are not maintained. They are not monitored. And in a residential area at night, they are effectively invisible. No Ring doorbell camera covers a wash. No municipal CCTV is angled into one. No plate reader registers movement through desert terrain. No street light reaches the channel floor. If a person, or anything else, moved through the wash behind Annie Guthrie's home after dark on the night of February 1, 2026, that movement would not appear on a single piece of surveillance footage investigators pulled in the first 72 hours. Not one frame. The channel itself runs directly off the back of Annie's property line and feeds into a broader drainage system that extends well beyond the immediate neighborhood. The terrain is dense, overgrown with desert vegetation, rocky and uneven underfoot, with sections where the channel floor sits significantly below surrounding grade. Moving through it at night requires either knowledge of the terrain or someone who does. Law enforcement knew about this wash early. It surfaced in community discussion within the first weeks of the investigation, long before any official acknowledgement pointed toward it. But knowing a location exists and systematically searching it are two different things. The official investigation checked what surveillance covered. The wash was never on that grid. Jim put it on the grid. Weeks before March 28th, Jim recovered a pair of women's pants from the wash behind Annie Guthrie's house. He photographed them in place. He did not disturb them. He did not reposition them for a better shot. He reported the find to the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Deputies were notified. The community tracked it closely. And then Jim went back. Not because he had new information. Not because law enforcement directed him there. Because the data from the first find told him the corridor was not finished giving up what it held. He was right. What he found on March 28th was not a second isolated discovery. It was confirmation that the first find was never an accident. On March 28th, in the same drainage channel, same corridor, same geographic origin point, Jim documented multiple items. A dark jacket, pants, lying undisturbed on the channel floor exactly where the desert had left them. He did not touch them. He documented everything exactly as found. Placement, condition, Location within the channel. Then he called the Pima County Sheriff's Department. That sequence matters. Photograph in place first. Report immediately after. Every step of proper civilian evidence protocol executed correctly. The find is sourced from a documented post on X published the same day, March 28, 2026, by the account at Hope Us Unto Faith 24. The post tagged a true crime account and Nancy Grace directly. The photographs in that post are the evidentiary record of what Jim found. They are public. They have not been disputed. The Pima County Sheriff's Department was notified. Deputies were made aware. That part is confirmed. Here is what is not confirmed. Whether those items have any forensic connection to Nancy Guthrie. Whether they are linked to the night of February 1, 2026. Whether they have been collected, bagged, labeled, and entered into evidence. Whether they have been submitted for DNA or fiber analysis. None of that has been publicly reported. The Commissioner announced a breakthrough. What that breakthrough specifically consists of, what law enforcement now has in hand, has not been laid out in full for the public. That gap between the announcement and the details is not an accident. It is a decision. And it raises a question that goes directly to the credibility of this institution. One find is a question. Two finds in the same location is an answer trying to surface. Defense attorneys build entire cases around single items of physical evidence found outdoors. Wind moved it. Rain carried it. Someone passing through dropped it. Those arguments work until there is a second find in the same channel on a different date. Because at that point the alternative explanations have to stretch to cover not one event but two. And the more they stretch, the less they hold. Retired FBI Special Agent Steve Moore has spoken publicly about this case and the investigative framework that applies directly to what Jim found. The methodology is called reverse tracing. You start at the discovery point and work backward. In a desert wash, the physics are fixed. Items move downhill, carried by gravity and water flow, following the channel in one direction. Which means if you find clothing at a specific point in that channel, you can calculate a range of probable origin points upstream. Two finds in the same corridor narrows that range significantly. It focuses the backward trace toward a defined area. And in this case, that area is not a remote stretch of open desert. It is the property whose back fence line feeds directly into this wash. That is not a conclusion. That is the investigative question the evidence is now formally raising. The same question retired special agents and former FBI analysts have applied to missing persons cases repeatedly. Physical evidence in outdoor environments does not cluster randomly. Clustering signals origin. Origin points to a location. And in this investigation, that location has had a name since day one. Now place those two finds against the surveillance record this investigation established in its first 72 hours. Every camera in the front of that property, the street, the driveway, the doorbell footage, captured nothing that placed Nancy Guthrie outside her home after the last confirmed sighting. No vehicle departure was logged by any plate reader in the area. The front of that property and the surrounding street were covered by cameras that captured nothing relevant to her disappearance after 9:50 p.m. on January 31st. Which means if Nancy left that property after 9:50 p.m., she did not leave through any of the routes those cameras covered. The back of the property is a different story. A drainage channel running off a back fence line at night produces zero evidentiary footprint on the systems investigators rely on. No footage. No plates. No witnesses with a sightline to a dark, overgrown channel below residential grade. Whatever moved through that wash on the night of February first moved without a record. That is not a theory. That is the logical conclusion of every surveillance gap this investigation has publicly confirmed, mapped onto a geography that now has physical evidence in it. Twice. An 84-year-old woman with significant physical limitations does not navigate rough desert terrain in the dark without either significant assistance or significant distress. The channel floor is uneven and rocky. The vegetation on the banks is dense. The grade drops sharply in sections. Moving through it at night requires either knowledge of the terrain or someone who does. The wash connects the back of Annie Guthrie's property to a broader drainage system that extends well beyond the immediate neighborhood. According to publicly available reporting, authorities have increased patrols around Annie Guthrie's home and the surrounding Catalina Foothills neighborhood. That expanded presence, combined with two documented clothing finds in the channel running off that property's back fence line, represents a geographic concentration of investigative attention that the public record has never fully connected into a single coherent picture. Until now. The community did that connecting work before law enforcement confirmed any of it. Within hours of the March 28 post going live, community analysts had already begun the reverse trace. Maps pulled. Distances between the first and second find measured. the drainage direction of the channel calculated against the property line. All of it cross-referenced against what is publicly known about movement from that property on the night of February 1st. That analysis was structured, sourced, and documented publicly, more transparently than anything the Pima County Sheriff's Department released in the same window. And this is not the first time that asymmetry has defined this investigation. Start with the blood evidence. Before any official forensic accounting was provided publicly, community analysts had already identified and documented the specific pattern of blood drops on Nancy's front stoop, their shape, their distribution, and what that distribution indicates about the conditions under which they were deposited. That analysis was technically grounded and published openly. The Sheriff's Department did not lead with it. The community did. Then there is the gun store inquiry. According to Fox News Digital, FBI agent Philip Martin, co-owner of Armor Bearer Arms in Tucson, confirmed that an FBI agent walked into his store carrying 3 pages of approximately 18 to 24 individuals with corresponding photos and names. The agent asked whether any of those people had purchased a firearm from the store within the past year. Martin checked. Not one name returned a match. The agent told Martin that investigators planned to visit additional stores. Community channels were tracking that thread before investigators publicly acknowledged the inquiry existed. The community was not speculating. They were following an active lead that law enforcement had not yet confirmed. And they were right. The flashlight detail added another layer. Community members identified a behavioral marker in the doorbell footage, a specific physical habit that narrows the profile of who is visible in that footage to a defined category of individual with a particular kind of occupational familiarity. That behavioral read was not offered by the Sheriff's Department. It came from people watching the same publicly available footage and applying structured observational logic to it. Each of these finds followed the same pattern. Community identifies something. Community documents it. Community publishes the reasoning openly. Law enforcement is then positioned as responding to civilian work rather than driving the investigation with institutional resources. That pattern repeated itself across 84 days without a single exception. And Jim's finds in the wash are the most geographically significant entry in that record, because they are not analytical. They are physical. Clothing on the ground. Evidence that does not require interpretation to matter. It requires collection, testing, and a department willing to treat a civilian's documented find with the forensic seriousness it demands. Whether this department is capable of that, given everything its own record shows, is a question the Commissioner's breakthrough announcement has raised without fully answering. Sheriff Chris Nanos received a formal no-confidence vote from inside his own organization. Not from politicians. Not from advocacy groups. From the deputies and personnel who work directly under him, the people with first-hand knowledge of how this department functions on an active investigation. A no-confidence vote from within law enforcement is not a procedural formality. It is an institutional alarm. Former Pima County Chief Deputy Rick Castigar went further. He spoke on the record, not anonymously, on the record, about specific concerns with how this investigation was approached. He knows this department from the inside. His concerns were not general. They were specific to how this case was handled. Then there is Dr. Richard Carmona, former sheriff of Pima County, former United States Surgeon General, a man whose credibility in this specific institutional context is not in question. Carmona stated publicly that the crime scene in this case had been permanently corrupted, not damaged, not partially compromised in ways forensic work might still recover. Permanently corrupted. That is a terminal assessment from someone who has run this exact department and who understands precisely what those words mean in an active investigation. And now, according to publicly available reporting, Sheriff Nanos is navigating an oath hearing. The Pima County Board of Supervisors asked him to clarify statements made during a sworn deposition in a separate First Amendment lawsuit. The request followed concerns about whether statements made under oath were accurate. A Pima County official, Dr. Hines, went further this week. He stated publicly that it was very possible that Nanos' past grudge against the FBI, stemming from a 2015 RICO investigation in which Nanos was nearly indicted, jeopardized elements of the Nancy Guthrie investigation. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer responded to the DNA delay with language that deserves to be stated precisely. She said the timeline of how that evidence was handled was not tracking at all. That the Guthrie family should be upset. That 11 weeks in a private Florida laboratory, while the FBI lab at Quantico waited, was inconsistent with how a case of this priority should be managed. 3 separate voices. 3 separate institutional perspectives. All on the record. All pointing to the same conclusion about how this department has managed the most significant missing person case in its jurisdiction in years. That is the context within which every statement from the Pima County Sheriff's Department, including the Commissioner's breakthrough announcement, must be evaluated. Not with cynicism, with precision, because the record demands it. The specific question that record raises about the March 28 find is this. The department was notified of the first clothing discovery in that wash weeks before March 28. What did they do with it? What forensic steps were taken? What was collected, tested, logged? None of that was communicated to the public proactively. The community surfaced the find. The community documented the location. The community tracked the response. And the public accounting of what the department did with that first find remains incomplete. Which means when Jim called in the second find on March 28, a cluster in the same channel, same corridor, same geographic origin point, the department already had a prior find from the identical location sitting somewhere in its evidence chain. Whether those two finds were treated as a connected pattern or handled in isolation is a question the Commissioner's announcement has still not fully answered. And the reason that question matters goes directly to what the breakthrough has to produce. The Commissioner used the word breakthrough. That word now has to mean something. Here is what it has to produce. The clothing recovered from that wash needs to be in a forensic laboratory. DNA testing, fiber analysis, biological material screening. Every available method applied to determine whether those items connect to Nancy Guthrie, to the property they were found behind, or to the night of February 1, 2026. That is not a request. In an active missing persons investigation with physical evidence documented twice in a defined location, that is the minimum standard of competent investigative response. If those results come back positive, if there is a forensic link between that clothing and Nancy Guthrie, this case changes shape entirely. For the first time in 84 days, investigators would have a confirmed physical connection between a location and the missing woman. A documented scene. A starting point for a route. The Foundation prosecutors need to build anything forward. That is what a breakthrough actually looks like when the science supports it. If the results come back negative, that is not nothing either. A ruled-out location is a redirect. It tells investigators where the evidence trail does not lead and forces the case in a new direction. Both outcomes move this investigation. Neither outcome is worse than the current state, which is no forensic result at all and a public that has been told a breakthrough occurred without being told what it consists of. The hair sample is now at the San Francisco Forensics Laboratory that helped convict Long Island serial killer Rex Heuermann. According to C.C. Moore's publicly available analysis, that laboratory extracted DNA from rootless hair samples, the same type of evidence present in the Nancy Guthrie case, and produced a profile that contributed to a guilty plea in 8 murders spanning nearly 2 decades. Moore stated publicly this week, if they really do have a rootless hair and it is from that kidnapper, then this is going to be the piece of information that will solve the case. Not help the case. Solve it. The gun store list, 18 to 24 people with photographs and names, confirmed on camera by Armor Bearer Arms co-owner Philip Martin to Fox News, was being cross-referenced against firearm purchase records across Tucson. The holster visible in the doorbell footage was being shown to local gun retailers. The FBI was building a map of who had purchased firearms in the area, and comparing it to the operational equipment visible on the porch at 1:47 a.m. The DNA is at the right laboratory. The gun store list was already in circulation. The community found clothing in the wash, twice, in the same corridor running off the back of the property where Nancy was last seen alive. And the Commissioner called it a breakthrough. Her medication was on the counter. Her hearing aids were on the nightstand. Her phone was on the nightstand. Her car was in the garage. Everything that belonged to her life was exactly where she left it. She has not been seen since a Bluetooth signal dropped at 2:28 in the morning. Day 84. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She raised 3 children alone after losing her husband at 46. She built a life in Tucson for over 5 decades. She brought live music to a hospital. She was a 30-year churchgoer whose single-missed Sunday service triggered everything that followed. She deserves an answer. And the wash behind Annie Guthrie's home, the one that runs off the back fence line, the one the official search did not prioritize, the one a man with a camera and a grid system walked twice and found clothing in twice, may be the geography that answer runs through. Every significant development in this investigation started outside an official channel. It started with someone watching, someone searching, someone unwilling to accept that the absence of a press release meant the absence of evidence. The Commissioner's breakthrough announcement exists in part because this community would not stop working when the institution went quiet. That is the standard this investigation has held for 84 days. It will hold it for every day that follows. If you have any information, contact 1-800-CALL-FBI. tips.fbi.gov. Pima County Sheriff's Department at 520-351-4900. The combined reward is $1.2 million. Completely anonymous. Drop a comment. 2 clothing finds. Same wash. Same corridor. Same property. What does the pattern tell you? And do you believe the department is treating this as the connected evidence trail it appears to be? Tell us. We read every single one. And stay close, because the moment the forensic results from that wash produce a public disclosure, this channel will be the first to break down exactly what it means and where it points. We will see you in the next one.